On today's afternoon flight, I'm back on runway 06 after using runway 24 on the morning flight. On the agenda is more circuit training. I was unlikely to have a shot at a solo due to the strong crosswind. The wind was almost perpendicular to the runway. This presented an opportunity though for another first experience, landings in a stronger crosswind. My first solo didn't happen this morning. I could try again on the midday flight, but not so fast. The weather was forecast to turn worse, and it did. This weather change caused a change of runway back to the usual runway 06 and mostly crosswind wind. This wasn't a safe environment for a first solo, but it was a great learning opportunity to practice crosswind approaches. I'd be flying with Davide. In this flight, the wind was almost all crosswind at 7 knots, with only a tiny amount of headwind, just 1 knot. I got into the flight knowing that a solo would be unlikely. My main challenge would be the crosswind. I also remembered Victor's pointers about using the plane's structure and the runway to help with spacing, and I wanted to see if I could put his advice into practice on this flight. I plan to use the 45 degrees technique, see hour 21 for more details, and to get a feel of the wind strut as a means to measure distance from the runway. I found that switching to the runway plus plane technique was challenging because I had spent so much time using landmarks for spacing. I turned from crosswind to downwind at 45 degrees a couple of times, but I was too busy with other operations to do the same for the downwind to base turn. The wing strut was not hard to use downwind. My main focus was landing with a strong crosswind. I was concerned that I would damage the plane. However, for the first time when learning a new skill, landing in crosswind was not as hard as I expected. While the pilot still needs to be focused and careful, the basic form of the technique is almost intuitive. This is because a pilot naturally points the nose of the plane into the wind to fly the plane on the extended center line. What was less intuitive was the inputs needed to steer the plane straight on the center line just a few moments before touchdown to prevent it from slipping sideways. These controls require a combination of aileron and rudder. I did use the rudder to straighten up the plane relatively well, and this did get the plane straight on the center line. This was sufficient for the relatively small amount of crosswind that I was dealing with. But in stronger crosswinds, I'll need to add ailerons. In Circuit 8, I attempted a glide approach, which failed. Reasons: 1, I delayed setting up the plane to glide speed, and 2, I didn't turn to the runway immediately. These 2 delays cost me altitude, which translates to reduced glide range. If this was a real emergency, I would have to land on a road or a patch of land. As a result, we changed this approach to flapless. We did another engine failure simulation in Circuit 9, which was much better. I adjusted altitude to get glide speed 68 knots and turned immediately towards the runway. I locked in the touchdown point to 1/3 the length of the runway and deployed flaps appropriately. Remember, the crosswind was still there, and I wondered how that would affect the approach, but just like with the powered approaches, I didn't really notice much difficulty there. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel right now. Just click on the subscribe button below this video. And of course, you can also head over to my detailed flight training log pages on the Tech Explorations website. In these pages, I document in detail all of my experiences and learnings from each one of my training flights. These logs contain a goldmine of information for any aviation student or anyone interested in aviation. Until next time, I wish you clear skies and safe landings.